Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so David Cross has been doing an interesting little media tour lately. I think he's promoting a special, and it's just been this kind of affable media tour of all the podcasts. He went on Joe Rogan the other day. I don't think politics came up at all. And, you know, he was one of the guys who was heavily critical of the Riyadh Comedy Festival and took a strong stance on that, which Joe didn't go to. I don't even know that they talked about that during that episode, but I didn't watch the whole thing. It just seems like he might be the type who would be like, yeah, I'm not going to go on Joe Rogan. I have no interest in that. But, you know, he went and had a pretty cool conversation with him. And he also talked to Bill Maher. And I mean, truthfully, he knows these people. And like, they've been in the same comedy world and entertainment world for a long time. So it's not that surprising that he's having warm conversations with them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think this conversation is decent, but Bill Maher is just so fucking insufferable. And I think maybe David Cross could have done a better job at making some of these arguments, but you know, it's also pretty sticky in some cases. And the thing that Bill Maher gets away with that he shouldn't have is being able to seem like the more informed one about this type of stuff, or like bringing up stuff that David Cross didn't really know how to respond to. Although I will say that Cross does make some very strong arguments. So we'll get to all that. So here's the first clip where they talk about Mamdani in New York, and Bill Maher, of course, just can't help himself and keeps calling him Mandami.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not wrong. And so, you know, I mean...
What has Trump been right on?
Well, I think he was right to attack Iran.
Oh, I highly disagree.
Yeah, I know. I figured
what do you
would.
mean? Why?
Because I do think of you as like sort of that, like, down the line liberal, like down the line...
I mean, in some ways, I'm definitely... I'm politically more Democrat socialist. I believe...
You're socialist. Again, I think you're plainly then you're to the left of me if you even say you're a socialist.
Well, I said democratic socialist.
I know, but I know what a democratic socialist is. That's Mandami, who's a straight up communist.
No, he's not.
Okay,
no, he's not.
Okay, he has someone working.
Bill.
Yeah,
all right.
He is, first of all.
Okay.
He has someone working for him named Sia Weaver.
Okay.
Have you read about her?
I have not.
See, that means you're in a bubble.
Okay.
Because you should have.
Okay,
so
let
me tell you who she is. She's
edify
like,
me.
She's like one of his top lieutenants. His big issue was the rent's too high.
Mm-hmm.
She's the head of like, we're gonna fix housing.
Mm-hmm.
This is like what got him elected. He has not disavowed her, and I could show you all her tweets that she's put out over the last few years in quotes. And one of them is, elect more communists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you have to read between the lines if somebody he stands with and by is saying, and also her other quotes are like, all home ownership is racist.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, I have an issue with that thing that she said. I don't know this woman. I will definitely look her up. I'm a fan of Mamdani's. I'm a fan of, I think he's going to be like LaGuardia. I really do.
He could wind up being an effective administrator. But his philosophical pinnings, and I could read other things from the Democratic Socialist Party that show that it's not different than communism, a lot of it. It is, I mean, it's about, they have statements about like, the government should take over industries and so forth. Like, I mean.
Well, I don't believe that, and I'm not a communist.
But they do. But that's part of, when I hear democratic socialist, I'm telling you, you can read up on those.
Sure, I mean, the people I'm fans of politically call themselves democratic socialists, align with that. Bernie Sanders, AOC.
Bernie is not a communist.
No, he's a democratic socialist. And
right. That's true.
And
there's that wing, yes.
And I've spent, over the years, a bunch of time in Scandinavia and those countries that are democratic socialist, and they're fucking awesome.
All right, yeah, so this is full boomer mode from Bill Maher. This might be one of the first times I've talked about him on the show or played this Club Random stuff. I might have done it one time before. And it's because he tends to make these very shallow arguments. And over the years, he's cultivated this personality of kind of delivering these quips in this sarcastic type of tone that is entertaining and is a very strong reaffirmation of the people who already think this stuff. And so usually his arguments aren't that worth engaging with. They did get into some interesting stuff here, but the lack of discernment, I think, when it comes to democratic, socialist, communist, etc., is something that a lot of people are going to deal with. And the truth is that on all of these issues that they talked about, mainly Mamdani and trans people, which I'll get to in a second, Bill makes these like strong sarcastic statements up front and then shows this like more nuanced kind of thought process about it that really there is the ground for the strong argument against what he's saying, except he just completely ignores that argument every time. So you can see what I'm saying in that at first he says democratic socialists are communists and Mamdani's a communist because of this person who works for him, who's like a tenants union person, and they're talking about like retweets and tweets and stuff that's totally meaningless. She's good on policy, and really what they're objecting to about her argument is this argument about property and whether or not the state has the right to seize property, and that's the type of organizing and the type of ideology that they fear. So while she has made some extreme statements on property, like the government has the sacred right to seize property, and this thing about not that property itself is racist, but that it is a tool or a weapon of white supremacy, in other words, a manifestation of racial disparity in America. I mean, that's just straightforwardly true. But to him, Bernie Sanders is acceptable. There's that wing, okay. And honestly, it's an accurate assessment that Bernie Sanders is on the rightward wing of the DSA, so I guess that's fair. But when it comes to this thing about socialism, it's important to get into this because this gets completely ignored in the public discourse, and it's because of people like Bill Maher, because he starts by saying, okay, this is all communism, right? This, like any seizing of property from the state or industries being taken over by the government, which David Cross says he doesn't agree with here, except that is not only an element of socialism, and in some cases something that a democratic socialist would argue for, but it's also just kind of a regular function of the government. That's something that the government does sometimes. So really, the foundation of all political conversations is a balance between how much is going to be privatized and how much is going to be socialized. How much is owned by the people versus how much is able to be owned and profited from by individuals. And the dynamic between that is really the push and pull of most iterations of modern society, and most sustainable versions of society seem to be some kind of balance of the two, including something like China. China is a balance between ownership of the state and market ownership of some things to allow for profit motive and things to be innovated within that space. So when you say that we should have socialized healthcare, we should nationalize the healthcare industry, that's why David Cross shouldn't have said that he doesn't agree with that, because if we were to get Medicare for all, for example, that would be an example of the state nationalizing an industry. And so when you argue for that and someone says that's socialism, that's unacceptable, that person is essentially robbing you of the ability to argue for a marginally better version of this society. That's not like some radical reform. It is actually just saying we need to push the needle in a certain direction because clearly people are not being accommodated for in the way that they need to be. So that's why a person like Zohran Mamdani gets elected in New York in the first place, is because the government and the capitalist entities in New York are not accommodating for people in the way that the social contract kind of implies that they should. And so somebody with the policies of Mamdani saying we're going to socialize more of this property, make sure that more people are provided for, that becomes appealing. So this ties in with the next issue that they get into, which is trans kids. And Maher gets a couple things just completely wrong in this conversation. And David Cross makes some pretty strong arguments, but there's also a couple things that I think he could have been stronger on. And this is an example of Bill Maher having particular examples of this stuff that David Cross isn't really ready to answer for, which I can't really blame him because this isn't necessarily his world. He's, doing comedy stuff and acting. And, it takes a lot of energy to be up to date on this stuff. So I want to take this conversation that they have about trans people and try to come out at the other end of it with a solid way to address those questions, as well as tying it into what I was just talking about with like this socialism, communism, capitalism conversation. So here's Bill Maher and David Cross talking about trans kids.
Where America is now, we're an outlier country. We don't do anything like the only people in the world who do this anymore, and I'm talking about not notifying parents in some places, letting kids self-diagnose at early ages, and then doing actual surgery, puberty block, things that are absolutely irreversible. That's just something only the
Are puberty blockers irreversible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's something only the Democratic Party believes in anymore.
I believe for, just
the idea of puberty blockers, of anything. Look, my health always comes first. The idea of like
this is the tequila, right?
Yes.
No, I'm not. I don't. I think they'll be
including your little girl.
Okay.
She needs to be checked. I don't know what.
Fuck that bitch. Fuck that little bitch with her black friends and trans friends, and not even understanding. She doesn't know.
Wait, she has trans friends in 3rd grade?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, they know they're trans in 3rd grade.
I knew one of her friends. I knew when he was a girl.
How old?
I think just turned 9, and is just the coolest kid. I think they're
boy
gonna
to
be
girl, girl to boy?
Girl to boy.
Girl to boy, okay.
And she has another very close friend who's not in this school, but who's boy to girl at 3.
But
3
girl
years
to
old.
boy, I knew somebody who said to me, actually more than one person who said to me, a woman said, I was what they called a tomboy. If I was alive now and acted the way I did then, that's what they would have done to me.
Well, nobody's doing this to her.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
literally, nobody is doing this to her.
How old?
She is, or he is, either 8 or I think 9.
Okay,
Just
then
turned 9.
somebody is doing something because 8 or 9-year-olds can't.
No, you know what they're doing?
Can't do anything on their own.
No, they're buying them boys' clothes.
Well, then they're doing something. They're doing.
Sure. Yes, you're right. They're buying them boys' clothes
and telling them you're a boy now. Okay,
no, they're not telling them. They're just agreeing with. They're like going.
Well, they're
okay,
agreeing
honey.
with an 8-year-old because
when
when has their judgment ever been off? Because America hears this and they're going to go, Bill's right. 8-year-olds can't really make decisions on their own like this. That's what most people are going to say. And this is where the Democrats are with David Cross living in Brooklyn, with Mandami Loving. And this is why, we're going to vote for J.D. Vance, and that's. I don't think
that's
it's America in a nutshell.
I don't.
Doesn't mean I don't love you.
No, I disagree with you.
I know it's okay.
Yeah, I know it's okay.
Sorry,
I'm
you're
aware.
Right.
I just want to impress upon you that the parents of the a couple of kids I'm talking about are not doing anything. If you are saying that buying that when they say I want boys' pants as opposed to a skirt, you're saying that's doing something. I think that's
the whole. I mean, it's not just the pants. It's just accepting the kid. The kid has, okay, maybe it's not anything to do with social contagion. The kid just knows right away at the age of whatever, he's in the wrong body.
Well, one of them was 3. One of them was 3 when
3, well, sure, 3. 3-year-olds. Who can't believe a 3-year-old?
It's not about believing them.
But kids are confused and they hear there's a lot of talk
there was
in school.
No confusion.
Yeah, there is confusion.
She wasn't in school yet. She was 3.
Well, I'm sure she hears things around the home. I'm sure there.
Okay.
Well,
what?
What I'm saying is, when I was a kid, we were too far the other way. We never heard about any of this. They should have told us. They should have said, you know what? Most people are men or women. but not everybody. And if you're not one of those two things, that's okay.
So this clip is getting passed around a lot in different directions. Some people are saying Bill Maher's a dumbass. Other people that agree with Bill Maher are saying that he dunked on David Cross. But these are the kind of things that people are talking about on the right. And when you hear Bill Maher getting to the end here, where he's saying, in my family, they should have exposed us to the idea that some men or women might be born in the wrong body. If that's you, that's okay, etc. Now, he goes on to say there that he thinks we've gone too far to the left, obviously, and loony crazy. But essentially, what he's arguing for there, and in the cases of the Scandinavian countries that he's talking about, what some Scandinavian countries have been going more in the direction of, instead of puberty blockers for kids, is focusing more on social transitioning and psychosocial support is what they call it. So as Bill Maher is pearl clutching and whining about what David Cross is saying here about them agreeing with what their kids say about their gender, buying them the clothes they want, allowing them to express themselves in terms of gender the way they want to, rather than trying to fit them into a box that they might not fit into, which is what a lot of parents do. The conservative argument in these Scandinavian countries is that's how you should handle gender dysphoria in children, even very young children, including 3 years old, rather than puberty blockers. So by the model of these Scandinavian countries that Bill Maher is referencing, what they are doing that he is refusing to do here is acknowledge that it's real. Gender dysphoria is real, even in very young children. And it's true that for some kids it might be a phase, it might pass, there might be some social aspects to it. So I mean, I think there's a strong argument for caution when it comes to whether to give kids gender affirming drugs. And there's a process for it. There's always doctors involved. And I always make this point when talking about it, but it's important to be made. The argument when it comes to puberty blockers here is that once somebody goes through puberty, their body is permanently altered. So if somebody is exhibiting signs of gender dysphoria, real gender dysphoria at a young age, there's evidence that suggests the best way to give that person a healthy life is to divert the process of puberty so that their body never undergoes that change. Now, Bill Maher's making the argument that that inherently is unhealthy. The only recorded side effects that there seem to be is some bone density issues in people, worth studying for sure. But the other aspect of this conversation that they didn't get into as much, that I think because Bill is not the type to criticize, capitalism or jump to that. But an argument that a lot of people make is like the profit motive involved in gender affirming drugs and whether or not that creates a situation where these type of drugs are being pushed to kids more than they should. And that's a tough argument to get around because it is true that those profit motives exist in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think it was Vosh who said years ago when he debated Charlie Kirk that Charlie Kirk can't outflank him when it comes to pharmaceutical companies wanting to profit from vaccines because he can just say nationalize the pharmaceutical industry. And Charlie Kirk will never go that far. So the same is true on this. And if that argument ever comes up, I think that's an important thing to say, is that yes, the profit motive does muddy the waters or make it harder to reach better outcomes when it comes to medication. Although honestly, I don't think it's true that medications are purposely bad for you for the sake of creating more profit motive. Usually in most cases, I don't believe that, but rather I believe that if there's an existing problem like gender dysphoria, that creates a demand for a certain drug and somebody's going to fill that demand. And if they can juice it and make as much money from it as possible or push it to more people because they feel like if there's a market for it, they will. That's exactly what they did with the opioids. And there was a demand for that for a reason. So when Bill Maher says that, Kamala Harris is the reason why they lost and this is why Democrats, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I'm the one who's going to make this argument. But I think the reason this was a losing issue for Kamala is because she ran away from it. And I understand why, because she didn't have time to make a great case on it. But if she'd showed some leadership on that, just like the issue with Gaza, then the base would have been behind her. And actually, she would have had a stronger base behind her because Democrats weaken their base when they run away from issues like that. And it's tough, but I think the right way to handle it, especially when talking about that aspect of it, the care and the medication, linking that back to a non-privatized healthcare system is the best way to remove that profit incentive and also make it a guaranteed right that people are going to have access to that care if they need it. So, that's the compromise solution here. And it's also probably the easiest way rhetorically if someone is trying to trap you talking about this trans issue is to try to steer the conversation back to that profit motive issue, because a lot of right-wingers are going to agree with you on that, and then make the point that nationalizing that industry would solve that problem while also not suppressing the issue of gender dysphoria, which is only going to lead to worse results down the line. So for young kids, even if your argument is that they shouldn't have medical intervention, well, then the compromise position is that there should be strong social and psychosocial support for them, because the issue is real and it needs to be addressed. And only by addressing it are you going to alleviate any type of panic or trend surrounding it.